We are here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Wednesday, June 19th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yejin and you're watching News Generation. Today we're joined by Park Ki-hoon.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And Im Sang-yeon.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Now, as usual, we're going to start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending online over the past 24 hours. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency issued this year's first nationwide malaria alert on Tuesday, a week earlier than last year. The KDCA cited an increase in malaria pathogen-carrying mosquitoes in what are classified as malaria-prone regions, including the cities of Seoul, Incheon, and the provinces of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do. The agency attributes the rise in malaria-carrying mosquitoes to higher temperatures, which these mosquitoes thrive in. Moving on in sports news, the Korea Football Association is in the final stages of appointing a new manager of the Korean men's national football team. The KFA's national team committee held a meeting in Seoul on Tuesday afternoon to narrow down the 12 shortlisted candidates. Local media has reported that the shortlist includes coaches from the domestic K-League, as well as Kim Do-hoon, who served as the interim manager during the last two 2026 World Cup qualifiers this month. The KFA plans to make its final decision by early July at the latest. Finally, a new report shows that only 3 out of 10 Koreans believe what they see or hear on news outlets to be true. According to the Reuters Institute's annual digital news report released on Monday, 31% of Koreans polled said they trust most news most of the time. Though this is up 3 percentage points from the previous year, the figure ranked 38th out of the 47 surveyed countries and is the lowest among 11 countries in the Asia-Pacific region. The report emphasized the growing disinterest in news among those aged between 20 and 40 as they turned out to consume less news not only through traditional media such as broadcast news and newspapers, but also through new media platforms including social media. So here in the studio, as we are a broadcasting and news station, this is quite some worrisome findings that we're seeing. Now, starting with you, Sang-yeon, why do you think that we're seeing, especially the millennials and Gen Z, less consuming news these days?
Well, first of all, there are just so many news outlets out there,
Right.
including Arirang News.
Hundreds of them.
Yes, definitely. So the youth, including myself, prefer convenience these days, and they try to look into the social media platforms that provide like short articles that summarize the content within 3 to
Right.
4 lines. And this is time-saving for the people since there are just myriads of information today. And if we are to consume all that news, social media is actually effective for us to save time. But I must say that not all the information posted on social media is actually true. There is obviously like some fake news and misinformation. And because social media is accessible to everyone, the flip side here is that anyone can post misinformation or fake news on those feeds. And apps like Instagram or X, the former Twitter, tend to display the feeds based on the personal algorithms. So if you're a user of one of those social platforms, then there is a higher chance that you will likely to see the news that are usually biased, and you will eventually have a leaned opinions on certain topics.
Right, and I think that if we get used to looking at or being exposed to misinformation not only through social media services or platforms, but we also see like misinformation on news outlets as well. I think that this kind of like triggers more disinterest in consuming news. So as reporters or journalists or those working in this area, we should always fact check what we're writing and researching.
Absolutely. Just echoing what Sang-yeon said, there's just so much information
Right.
out there, even compared to the past, obviously. In the past, like in our parents' generation, we only had the traditional, national news to get our information from and the newspapers. But nowadays, ever since, the smartphones came out, there is just so much content out there, information and different sources. So there's just too much to choose from. So it kind of feels like when you flick through Netflix, there's so much content.
Yeah, it's hard
you
to
end up
choose.
just spending all your time just looking through, hey, what should I
Right.
watch next? And you don't end up watching anything. And I think it is a worrying sign. But like what you said, Eugene, as a reporter, the reporters, they're doing their job. And for consumers, we need to be a bit more mindful and know which news outlets to, actually read into, because there are so many. We need to know how to filter out and distinguish what is right and wrong. And
Right.
obviously, reporters like Eugene, they're doing their job. So, and like this, Arirang has been around for decades. So obviously, that just shows that we are very credible
We stick
news
to the
outlet.
fact. Okay.
Yep. So yeah, watch Arirang.
What a dedicated group of panelists, all right. That was our news feed for this Wednesday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Today we're going to talk about something that we use every day, the item that we can't keep our hands off, which is our phones. So to find out more, let's first take a look at the screen. Not this one, but the big one. We do a lot of things with our phones, but their primary function is for us to keep in touch with others. We've talked about this on NewsGen that millennials and Gen Z are known to typically hate talking on the phone, as some find voice-to-voice conversations awkward and that they give them anxiety, preferring to send text messages instead. However, recently, a new type of communication is booming among the younger generation, ironically, using their voice. Right, so today we're going to talk about this newly trending way that millennials and Gen Z are actually keeping in touch, right?
Yo, what's up, dude? When is our next podcast gonna be? Come on, man. I know you're busy with your life, but I'm busy too. But we gotta grind it out and do it every week. Come on, till we make it, brother. Hey, let me know what your schedule looks like next week, all right? See you soon. Bye.
Oh my gosh, Kyun, we're actually on air. This is a
we?
live broadcast, so what are you doing?
Me? I was just being cool, being an MZer.
Really?
Following the trend of voice messaging.
Oh.
Since today's topic is on voice messaging, I sent one through Instagram to my good old friend, Walter.
Who's watching, I bet?
He's probably watching right now, like listening to my voice message. Anyway, it's fun, easy, it saves time, and of course, trendy.
Right, so it's indeed fun, easy, saves time, and it's trendy because we're seeing more of the younger generation, millennials and Gen Z, using these voice messages. These are also known as voice notes as well. Now, I want to clarify that these are different from voice to text or voicemails because this is kind of like a feature that was provided, that's available on iMessage or apps like WhatsApp, where you actually record your voice and you send them to your other person that you're trying to keep in touch with. So back to you, Kyun, do we have any stats that kind of show or back up how much our generation is into using this feature?
Absolutely. But before I do, the function of voice messaging first started in 2011 through WeChat, a Chinese messaging app, very similar to KakaoTalk here in Korea. It became much more popular and widespread when Apple equipped their version into iMessage back in 2014. Since then, many social media platforms have added this feature, and many youngsters have become accustomed to this type of communication. So for more figures, let's take a look at the screen. So as you can see in the first bar, just in the year 2022, 7 billion voice messages were sent every day. Secondly, over 2 years, there was an increase of 50% in the number of voice messages sent using Snapchat.
Wow.
And lastly, according to Hinge, a popular dating app, they analyzed and found out that there was a 48% increase in the chance of meeting in person when using voice messaging.
I see, interesting.
So obviously the last figure sounds quite hopeful for singles out there, especially men who have attractive voices.
Like you, and Sang-hyuk too.
Maybe like me.
Right, so increasing the chances of getting to meet someone in person, I think that's one of the reasons why our generation is into using these voice messages. But I bet that there is more. So Sang-hyuk, could you tell us some of the more reasons why we're so into voice messaging these days?
Sure. So according to the recent Washington Post articles, I think there are two reasons for the huge popularity of voice messages among the MZers. The first reason has to do with the fatigue of the MZers, especially when they use the chatting apps like KakaoTalk. They have to look into the screen on and wait for the answer from the other side, the end users. But with the voice messages, you just have to record your voice, and with a click, you can send the message right away to the recipients, which is really convenient to use. Now, the second reason has to do with the factors of telephobia. So as you know, there are many young people these days who have fear of taking phone calls. So But for the voice messages, I think it is convenient for the MZers because they can send a message to the end user, and they do not necessarily feel like they're disturbing their privacy or time. So I think these kind of voice notes or voice messages are like the middle ground of the text and the phones. So for the young people, they can actually keep enough amount of affection with the people at the end, and at the same time they can effectively communicate with this person, but at the same time they don't feel like they're actually disturbing their time and individual personal space.
I really like the expression middle ground between text and also calling. I think, as Sang-hyuk and Ki-yoon mentioned, these are some of the reasons why our generation is into voice messaging. Now, to find out more, we also asked our viewers whether or not they use voice notes frequently, and if they do, why. And here's what 3 of them had to say. So if we look at the comments, Sean Mendez says, I prefer voice recording, and there could be several reasons why you prefer voice recording over texting. Perhaps it feels more personal, saves time, or allows for better expression of emotions and tone. Plus, it can be more convenient when you're multitasking. SGR says, I hate receiving voice recorded messages. I can't listen to them without everyone in the room hearing the message, and I can't quickly scroll up and remind myself what was said before. Jack Thompson says, I really enjoy a voice note. It really expresses emotion a lot better than typing, and it's a lot more fun too. So I think that the opinion is kind of divided on whether you find voice messages to be convenient or not. Now, for a more in-depth discussion, we're actually going to invite a Taiwanese Gen Z who says that she frequently uses voice messages when keeping in touch. We'll be right back after the break. We're back. Today we're joined by Tsai Yu-woo, a Taiwanese Gen Z, and she says that she's an avid user of voice messages to stay in touch with others. Welcome, Tsai Yu, to the show.
Hello.
Good morning. Great to have you. So our first question for you, Tsai Yu, is how often do you use voice messages, and why do you use this feature so frequently?
I use the voice messages a lot, and mostly because it's really convenient and efficient. And instead of typing out long messages, I can simply speak my thoughts and send them instantly. And when I'm on the go or I want to multitasking, I can save the time and reduce misunderstandings that can happen with text messages. Also, like my country, Taiwan, we use traditional Chinese that is more complicated than simplified Chinese, which may be a great inconvenience while typing. And that's why I use voice messages more.
So, what are some pros and cons of using voice messages?
The pros are like voice messages are quicker and easier to create. And at the same time, it's more emotional and it's clearer. That also we can save our time when we're like driving, cooking, even studying, or in other situations that is difficult to type. And for the cons are like voice messages can be overheard in public, and it's difficult to use in noisy places or when silence is required. Also, voice messages can take up plenty of storage space on devices that I think needs to be improved.
Okay, as a last question, what do you think about the future of voice messages? Do you think more people will use them from now on?
Yes, I think more people will use the voice messages in the future because of the rise of smart devices and like AI virtual assistants. People are getting more familiar with using voice commands and voice-based interactions. Also with remote work and virtual chats being so common now, sending voice messages provides a personal and intimate connection between people and help keep communication clear and effective. So I think that voice messages will definitely become an even bigger part of how we communicate every day.
So we'll have to see how this trend will unfold. All right, thank you so much for your amazing answer, Tayu. We really appreciate it.
Thank
you.
you.
Right, so we've heard from our viewers through their comments and through our interviewee, our guest Tayu. So let's see if you guys are also part of this trend. We're back with our OX signs, OX quiz. It's been quite a while, so please raise the O or X sign depending on your answer, gentlemen. So let's go with the first question. Number 1, when I want to chat with my friends, I prefer calling over texting. 1, 2, 3.
Texting.
Texting.
By far.
So both of you guys raised X. So Kiun, could you first start and explain why you chose X?
Well, first of all, when I do chat with my friends, it's usually about the least important things in life that doesn't even deserve a phone call.
Oh, really?
And also, like, I make group chats among really close friends, so I'm always bombarded with so many different texts in one go, and it's hard to keep up with the first message. So it's gonna take my own time to scroll back up and just read through what I missed out. But when I do call my friends, it's usually about something that's a little more serious.
Emergent matters?
And emergency matters, like when I need to borrow money, for example.
I hope you don't do that often.
Just kidding. So like when I need to ask a question or find something out immediately, I would obviously call. And when someone calls you, you immediately kind of feel, oh, this must be some kind of emergency.
Yeah, I know.
Because friends don't really call each other, especially
Yeah, I
guys.
think so.
You rather text because
Right.
it's much more convenient and comfortable. But yeah, that's when I make phone calls.
Okay, well noted. Now, what about you, Sang-yeong?
So I bet Kyun has very good friends because I can totally agree with him. I do have friends in a group chat consisted of 4 my closest friends, and we mostly say goofy stuff that are least important. So we don't really necessarily have to call each other to communicate. If you're really best friends, then you can just know what he's thinking just by reading his mind without calling them via phone. But of course, I do call my friends if it's really urgent matter.
Great. So both of our panelists raised X for the first question. Now, moving on to our second question. Number 2, I find texting or online messengers more comfortable than calling for work-related matters. 1, 2, 3. Both X again. So now to you, Sang-yeong, could you please explain why you raised X?
Yeah, so I think it's a different story when you have to do like business contact with others. So if it's really important, I think calling via phone explicitly express your notifications or inquiries to the person involved. Because I believe in the power of oral voice. If
they're
it's,
important.
definitely. If it's something really urgent, then I tend to call the other people via phone. I try to use my intonation in a serious tone to deliver the seriousness and the urgency of the matter explicitly. And also, one thing I really hate about the text message is that there are often cases when the person at the end gives the replies like several hours later, which really annoys me because if I'm in a hurry, I really need the answer right away. But the person will try to lag the time, and this could be annoying if you're really in a hurry situation.
Right, so calling can give you an answer ASAP, and also you can sometimes effectively send your message more clearly. Now, what about you, Kiun?
No, I fully agree with Sang-yeong. And I actually had telephobia myself, and I was only able to overcome it a few years ago through work.
Oh, because
here in
lucky.
Arirang.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Arirang.
Thank you, Arirang. Okay. Well, most work can be communicated online these days, and many people do just text and through online. But there are times where a phone call is required, and when you're obviously in a hurry and you need to get things done on the spot, you obviously need to make a phone call. And it's very important to sound very professional. And you have to be able to convey your messages through your voice. And I know a lot of people, many youngsters, avoid phone calls because they have that fear of not being able to understand or not being able to just voice out their messages like the way they want to. But look, it's very important. Like right now, we're talking to each other face to face. That's the interaction that people need. I know we're living in a digital age where everything's so convenient. We can do everything online. But to be a better person and a better public speaker, you need to be good at expressing yourself verbally.
Yeah, I definitely think that voice-to-voice communication is like a stepping stone to face-to-face communication. Right, and moving on to our next question, I think that you guys both mentioned the pros and cons of voice messaging, not voice messaging, but voice-to-voice conversation through calling and also text messaging. So our final question is number 3. Do you think that voice messaging kind of makes up the disadvantages of calling and text messages? 1, 2, 3?
ONX.
Oh, ONX.
Both.
Both ONX.
I mean,
Why?
like voice notes can definitely be a simpler way to communicate compared to texting, but it really depends whether they're receiving it, like person on the other end responds to you via text or voice messages. If they reply to you via text, obviously you have to look at the screen, which you always wanted to avoid in the first place. So
Right.
I think it really depends on the other person.
Yeah, it depends on how you use it and also on the other person. How about you, Sang-yeon?
To be honest, I think voice messages are only effective when you're driving. So
yeah,
if you're
that makes
really in an urgent matter, then I think voice messages could be effective. But I think it still lags behind in terms of real-time communication.
Right, and this is like just a new emerging trend that we've been seeing recently, so we'll have to see how it grows or unfolds. Now, finally, before ending off, through our discussion today, we talked about how voice notes are becoming more popular among the younger generation, who find them to be more comfortable and effective in communicating. But the key to good communication is always good manners and being considerate of the other person. So last but not least, what are some things that we should keep in mind of when using these voice notes?
I think it's really important to think about who you're sending these voice messages to. Now, if it's to your friends, I mean, everything's casual. You can say whatever you want. It can be very comfortable. But if it's work-related people, your seniors, or even adults, they might find it a little disrespectful and rude, just receiving voice messages.
Yeah, why not just call?
Exactly, because it's only convenient for the person who's actually, sending the message. So I think it's good to be mindful of who you're sending these to.
Right, definitely. And how about you?
Well, there are definitely some manners that you have to comply with, not only for the voice messages, but also when you're
Generally?
sending text or emails. And I could see that many new employees, MZers, had kind of difficulties with these manners when they first enter the company. So, for example, you should not call someone late at night or early in the morning. In that case, if it's really an urgent matter, then you should rather send an email. And also, when you're sending a very important notification, in that case, rather than calling the person via phone, I think it would be better to write down the notification on a text. So this will give the person in the end to go through all those notifications and give you the answer efficiently.
Yeah, I think that it's best to choose a type of communication depending on who you're keeping in touch with and for the purpose as well. Now that's all the time we have for today, but NewsGen is here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks today to Park Ki-hoon
Always a pleasure.
and Im Sang-yeon.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.